What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Celtics Talk Podcast here on the NBC Sports Boston Podcast Network. Coming to you, I resisted the urge last night to do the emergency pod. Now, Damian Lillard getting traded to the Eastern Conference, it's a big deal, right? And it had some serious trickle-down effect on the Celtics, and it's still lingering today. And that's kind of where we're at. The storyline has shifted a little bit. We know now the Bucks are going to be more of a threat in the Eastern Conference, giving Giannis an elite running mate in Damian Lillard. Those pick and rolls, like there's so much to digest there in terms of how this team is going to be, but it feels like Celtics, Bucks, it's just a collision course here in the Eastern Conference. Got my guy, Tommy Giles. He's going to drop by a little bit later, talk about that, and check the odds on who's going to emerge as the Eastern Conference champion. But like the big storyline right now, and the big storyline that we're kind of left digesting, is what happens with Jrue Holiday. Okay, so the Bucks make the decision, move on from him to bring in Lillard, send him to Portland. Portland's not going to keep him. Part of the reason they love the package that they were getting from the Bucks is they can now turn around and move Jrue Holiday for more assets, more maybe I would call it like an acceleration package here, where they can get back to competing really quick if they make the right steps and keep parlaying these assets into, whether it's draft picks, whether it's, tradable contracts, whatever it is. The Blazers are trending a lot better than what maybe they could have acquired from the Miami Heat. So the big lingering question, can the Celtics go get Jrue Holiday? And I'll admit, like initially I was like, there's no way, because when you crunch the numbers, you sit there and you say, it would have to be some package of Malcolm Brogdon. And the easiest way to get to that salary number is to include Robert Williams. You guys already know we're not going there, or Al Horford. And it's hard for me to see, with the way the Celtics have committed to Al, especially on this 2-year extension, going that route. But certainly it's something you have to think about. And then today, John Hollinger, writing on The Athletic, mentioned that the Celtics could cobble together. Now, I didn't think this was possible at first, to take essentially 6 players and combine their salaries together. It would be Brogdon, Hauser, Pritchard, Cornette, Jordan Walsh. And every time I do this, I forget somebody. But all those players would be moved to sign and trade Blake Griffin, which is the mystery piece that I had not considered. And so could you use that to get to the salary number, throw in a bunch of first-round picks, and make that deal? Now, there's so many hurdles here, right? One, do the Blazers want what you're offering? And, taking on all those players, and even your picks are late first round, 28, 29, 30th, if you're as good as you think you're going to be. So not incredibly sexy, but still like first round picks are first round picks. And that is important when you're trying to make moves, especially further down the road when they can be adding talent. From there, the Celtics, how do you fill out the bench? It gets a lot more difficult having to fill 5 other spots or whatever. Now, Blake might not be part of the plan if he doesn't plan to come back, at least at the start of the year or further into the season. It's fair to wonder, like, what are the roles? Okay, you're moving on from Brogdon and Pritchard, but you're bringing in Jrue Holiday. You still have Derek White. You still have all your bigs. You feel pretty good about your top 6. And maybe you can fill out the roster by bringing in guys who just want to be part of a championship team. The bill does, and this is the other conundrum here, is like, okay, now both the financials for this season and deeper into the future get a little bit difficult to manage. Okay, Celtics would be going into the second apron likely to fill out their roster this season. If you're going to do it, it's probably the year, because the penalties get a lot harsher next year. But if you're bringing in Jrue Holiday, it's probably not just for 1 year. You're probably talking about an extension. Now it gets even more difficult to keep it as the Jays Supermax extensions start to hit the book. So my long-winded way of saying there's a lot of complications, and I think ultimately that it comes down to what the Blazers want. Is there a team out there that can put together a more aggressive package, maybe a little bit sexier with the young talent? Look, if you engage the Blazers and said Robert Williams, even after the DeAndre Ayton acquisition, I think they would have to give that strong consideration. Again, Brogdon and what the Celtics are offering for spare parts, like maybe you just bank that Jordan Walsh or Sam Hauser would be intriguing. I'd love to see them develop here in Boston. And so it's all the balance you got to strike. Riding all over the top of this, and as you'll hear me and Giles about to joke about, because we've been texting about it today, is that it's just wild. The Celtics were the favorite to come out of the East 24 hours ago, and well, now everything is kind of wild and we're left reassessing pretty much the entirety of the roster because this is what we do. We are reactionary and, Celtics have some big decisions ahead. So let's just get right into it. Here's my chat with Giles about this whole Jrue Holiday situation. All right, Giles, we were just talking on the TV about this Jrue Holiday situation. How you feeling? Just start with, we're going to start big picture here. Like, how you feeling about the Jrue Holiday potential?
Big picture, it's interesting to me how this happens. Like the dominoes, you know what I mean? Damian Lillard gets traded to the Bucks, and all of a sudden the Celtics roster is just deemed not good enough, and you got to go out there and do whatever you can to get Jrue Holiday. And you start to think about it, like, is that really in their best interest? Because 2 days ago, they had the best odds to win the Eastern Conference. Now they don't. And obviously that's because, the Bucks did add a great player and Damian Lillard, but it makes your head spin a little bit. And then you get the popsicle headache because you start to try to figure out, how do you make the salaries work? How are you going to make the salaries work long-term with the second apron and everything else? So I'm kind of hanging on for dear life and just like leaning on the experts like you to kind of let us know what's possible and what's not.
So I can tell you what's possible. I don't know if I can tell you if it's the right move or not. I can tell you that I'm a little bit worried. So like the easiest pathway is Malcolm Brogdon, who is unfortunately just going to be thrown into all these conversations, whether he likes it or not, and adding either Rob or Al Horford, because that's just the easiest way to make the money work to get up to Jrue's salary. Now, that being said, I can't imagine the Celtics want to do that.
Right.
Celtics, let me tell you, if you even think about trading Rob, there'll be problems. But I do think about, Al's getting a little bit older. I don't know how you replace him, though. So I like, to me, those scenarios are probably off the board. I think they're just too cumbersome for me. And it's also funny because Al Horford's agent is Jrue Holiday's agent. So, like, imagine having to make those calls. Jason Glushon has to do that. But here's the other thing. John Hollinger on The Athletic. I kept, because when we first came up yesterday, I was like, there's no way you can stack enough contracts. All the guys you just signed this offseason aren't eligible to be traded till like October 15th or December 15th, and it just gets cumbersome. But there is a way, because they can sign and trade Blake Griffin as part of this deal and bring him back. And, if he's not part of your future plan anyway, he's just sort of farewell present to potential. So I was running it down. Luke Cornett, Jordan Walsh, Peyton Pritchard, Malcolm Brogdon, Blake Griffin. And man, every time I do this, I forget one player.
Sam Hauser?
Yes. Nailed it.
Okay.
How would you feel if those were if you had to go, like, again, there's a lot of ifs here. One, are you going to deplete your depth? And two, would the Blazers even want to do that? But would you go 6 for 1 if it delivered Jrue Holiday?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would. That scenario, yes. Those guys you laid out there, and I think depth, you figure out as you go.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. It's like, that's a future problem, which I guess also is interesting because, all right, now you add Jrue Holiday. What does that mean for him next year and the year after that? Because you can't pay everyone. So you can't pay everyone. Right. When Jaylen Brown's making what he's making, Jason Tatum's going to be up for Supermax at some point, and you also have Kristaps Porzingis making a ton of money.
And I've said, like, I think the Celtics have to be careful. Like, they would be treading up probably close to the second apron with the deal because they have to add money, and then they would have to, not only that, they would be having to sign 5 new players to fill out their roster, and so they're going to go up into the second apron, and that opens up a whole can of worms, especially further into the year. But if you're going to do it, this is the year to do it. It's sort of your last gasp, so I'm kind of like okay with it. They would have a great top 6, right? Like, all of a sudden you're wondering, like, who's not starting? Rob, Derek White, like, you have options, you have some depth. You just got to feel it out. And you know what? It's a lot easier to go get somebody when, like, hey, look, this is the championship roster. So I think those are things you can figure out. I do think if you make that move, you're probably telling Jrue, we need like a 2-year extension, line him up with Porzingis. And you can always get off that money if you had to. Like, that's all down. Like, it all comes down to would the Blazers do it. And so I'm intrigued. It's just fascinating to me that, like you said, that we pivoted that quickly to Celtics have the best odds in the East. And now it's like, they got some work to do. And it's like, I don't know if that's fair. But
let me ask you, how quickly do you think the Blazers are going to trade Jrue Holiday? Because, wasn't part of the Damian Lillard, the timing of the trade, like, hey, we want to get out ahead of this, like, before media day? Because, it's going to... How awkward is it going to be when Jrue Holiday is there for media day and he's like, it's great to be a Blazer, but I know I'm not going to be, and who knows, maybe 10 minutes from now.
And that's what's interesting to me. I'm almost fearful to record this podcast because I feel like it's going to be a quick turn here. They're going to want to get some finality to this and kind of move on. Now, the Blazers showed great patience by waiting for this deal to come along with the Bucks.
They got a great, they did really well.
Now you look at it and you're like, well, no kidding. Like, no wonder they didn't rush to do the Miami thing. Like, they got such a good deal, and now they're going to parlay the big acquisition in Jrue Holiday into something even grander. Like, they are really going to help accelerate their own process. So can they show the same diligence? Would they be okay with carrying Jrue into the regular season? Would Jrue be okay with it? So there's just so many little variables to this that are fascinating. It does get easier for the Celtics if that trade happens in the season, because then some of their other guys could be eligible. Maybe it's a little bit easier to make the money work. Maybe you're not as worried about trading depth, but it's just fascinating. We kicked this whole thing off by saying a couple of days ago, Celtics were the top odds in the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
You were punching around on our friends over at Fanatics.
Oh yeah.
What do we got? What are we looking at now, Giles?
I mean, well, the Celtics were right there. They were basically, co-favorites with the Denver Nuggets to win the championship. Now the Celtics are fourth to win the championship because the Milwaukee Bucks are the favorites. They're at plus 380. You got Denver plus 500, Phoenix plus 550, Celtics plus 575. So those are the four teams. Those are the core four there. So the Celtics went from, first or second best odds, kind of right there with Denver, to now the fourth best odds. It's quite reactionary.
I was going to say
too. Their odds, slipped to fourth, but they didn't change a ton.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes what happens is the sports books and the market is what it is. They don't want to back off as that much because they don't need to. They feel like, people are just going to, see, hey, the Celtics have the fourth best odds now. We should bet them. Plus 575. It's only come down. The price has only come down a little bit.
Right. It's not a great value play in the moment, right? Because like they were plus 500 the other day, and you do think like their chances of getting to that stage are a little bit more difficult. So if that was to drop to plus 800, I think you'd get a lot more activity there.
And it's not going to.
Right.
It's not going to drop there because again, like
until at least maybe when there's finality with Jrue, or maybe when we start seeing these teams, maybe something will move. But yeah, it's hard for me to imagine before the start of the season that these odds are going to shift very much.
I also find the Eastern Conference kind of interesting too, because Milwaukee is now obviously the favorite plus 160, and the Celtics are at plus 220, and then the third team on the list is Cleveland down at plus 750.
So you know what?
They're saying it's a 2-team race, and that's it.
Which is okay. So that's the way it sort of felt to me in the aftermath when I was kind of digesting this trade. I said, "Wow, it really does feel like a 2-horse race now between the Celtics and Bucks." Now, can the Sixers, if they get their act together and James Harden gets figured out, can they get in the mix? Of course. Cleveland's like such a unique thing. Like the Donovan Mitchell thing's kind of hovering over it. Their GM just getting some trouble. I wonder what is if they can maintain that success of last year and take that next step and be in the mix. But as you said, feels like a 2-horse race right now.
It does. I find it interesting too, though. We had some hypothetical odds on early edition, and the favorite there was Philadelphia to land Jrue Holiday. Which, if they do, I would think Philly would definitely have the third best odds in the East, but they're not going to jump ahead of the Celtics with Jrue Holiday.
No. And look, I mean, it gets intriguing. Maxey, Jrue, and Embiid, and who Embiid would presumably be happier, and there's less drama with Harden. I think for the NBA, that's
you think Harden's out if that's the move?
It has to be, right? Like, and I don't know if there's a three. People keep saying, well, maybe there's a 3-team deal where Harden ends up in LA and the Philadelphia gets Jrue. John Hollinger, pointed out the same thing. He's like, why wouldn't LA just go get Jrue? Like, so much less of a headache, so much more of a guy who's like won something besides, James Harden won a scoring title. So it will be fascinating to see how this plays out. If you're the Celtics, and I joked about this the other day, like there was so much drama around everybody else, Giannis and Harden. You felt pretty good about your spot.
Yeah.
Get a little bit dicier now.
Here's another interesting market. Just one more. The regular season MVP.
Oh,
so Giannis he has the third best odds at plus 550. I'm wondering if it becomes more difficult for Giannis to win the award with Damian Lillard on the team. I mean, is he sharing the spotlight so much that it takes away a little bit? Because I've liked.
We always say that too, right? Like we're like, oh, he's got another superstar. It makes it
easier.
There's that. I mean, we always play that game with Tatum too. Like Jaylen Brown's gotten so good that now he has a running mate, and like, do we credit him as much as like Luka when he's carrying the whole thing down there? And so that is interesting to me.
I've liked Jason Tatum because I've loved everything I've seen this offseason from him.
All that work,
everything, and he's right now he's got the fifth best odds, actually Fanatics has him tied with Embiid for the fourth best odds at plus 750. So all right, keep an eye on.
Well, powered by Fanatics Sportsbook, where you can earn up to 5% fan cash on your bets. You got to go do TV. So but maybe by the time you're done, we'll have some resolutions for this scenario.
That would be interesting, and then the odds will all shift. And we can do it all over. Yeah.
All right, we need to get this podcast up as quick as possible because I wonder if some stuff will start coming down or if we'll get more definitiveness about what might happen with Jrue Holiday here. You got to think he wants to know where he's going to be. You got to think teams want to know, like, hit media day and feel good about this is the roster. So I'm sure the Blazers are soliciting their bids and getting ready to decide what their next step is in this process. I'll say this, like, if the Celtics ultimately decide to sit this out, what the exercise here does sort of remind us that the team has one more swing of the bat. And, some of it is, I keep saying, is this the right move because of Jrue Holiday's age? There is you have to think these things through. And so I think, I'm warming to the idea, or at least you have to at least make that call. You have to at least figure out if you're, if it would be a reality and make that decision. Once you know there's a legitimate chance. But it's not easy. And you start thinking about the players that could become available further down the road. Okay, like, what happens with Embiid in Philadelphia? Do you want to be able to jump into that conversation? I still think the Celtics can do that because, at that point, something went wrong here, or maybe you win a title, and maybe you're just thinking about the future anyway. So, the Celtics got some decisions here, but it's amazing that a team that has been in 4 Eastern Conference Finals and 1 Finals appearance in the last 5 seasons, or 3 and 4. Like I always think about those Miami series. There's a chance here for them to keep adding to what they've got, even though they've got Jason and Jalen and the fact that they can even get in and on the conversation for Jrue Holiday is it speaks to what they've built and the position they've put themselves in. If this isn't the right move, maybe there's something further down the road in the season. I think about it would be good to be able to get into the season, see how these things look with Porzingis in the mix now. Are you comfortable with Derek White as your starting point guard? How do you feel about the depth of this team? How does Brogdon play and what's his injury feel as we get into the year? So just a lot to digest and figure out. And man, the season hasn't even really started. Media day's coming Monday. You'll hear from all the players on the Celtics roster. Whole bunch of new questions to ask them about the state of the Eastern Conference and what's ahead. But this is an interesting little wrinkle. The East got better. Feels like a 2-horse race with them and the Bucks. Do the Celtics need to further load up there in this arms race, or are they already well positioned? Only time will tell. I will say the fact that they got Thanksgiving Eve, I believe it is, against the Bucks here in Boston, that's going to be a fun one. For now, I need everybody to go like, subscribe, check us out on the YouTube page. Slam that subscribe button because these pods are coming fast and furious. Might even have a little something for you before we even get to media day. So that's all I can say right now. I'm excited about it, and maybe check back on Sunday, and we'll see if it came through. We'll talk to you next time on the Celtics Talk Podcast.